Good evening, Guyana. Welcome to another edition of Whip-Lash. My name is Christopher Jones, the APNU AFC Opposition Chief Whip. On tonight's program, we will be recapping Budget 2025, $1.382 trillion, and what does that mean for the people of Guyana. As well, we will go live to New York, in which we will be joined by Rickford Burke, and he will be bringing us some updates. Rickford, a pleasant good evening to you. We have been following the development stories there in New York involving yourself, Melissa Atwell, popularly known as Melly Mel, the NYPD, the New York Police Department, and the Guyanese critics. We saw your live feed this afternoon, and we saw the post from Melly Mel. For the benefit of the viewers, because we already put out there that the Guyanese critics is essentially wanted by the New York Police Department. Update us on what is happening there.
Good afternoon, good evening, Chris. Thanks for having me. Good evening to your listeners. Well, what has happened is that, Guyanese critics still thinks that the lawlessness that they behave with in Guyana is acceptable in New York. And over a number of years, he has been harassing me via social media. And in Guyana, they use that very type of tactic to arrest people like yourself, people like Gavin Matthews, Sherrod Duncan, so many other persons that have been arrested because they criticize the government on social media. In Critic's case, he has been threatening me, harassing me, calling my number, threatening me, sending people to threaten me, doing the things that the PPP wants him to do. And as was advised by the FBI, every time one of these incidents occur, we should report it to the NYPD. So there are a number of complaints that we've made, at least I have made, to the NYPD. And I've been keeping the State Department, the Justice Department informed about these developments. One time, he gave out my number on social media and had several people call me and threaten to kill me. And then he has been so proud, he stayed on his show many times live and called my number. And so every time he did that, we reported that to the New York City Police Department. And then he came to New York. I guess he thinks he's big and bad, and has been calling my number. While we were talking with the police, he was calling my number several times, which is harassment. And the threats, along with calling several times to persons and harassing them on social media, it's aggravated harassment. It's an arrestable offense. And so today, after talking with people at police headquarters, I went out to where he was, basically, and I told him, come and meet me. But what it was is that we were communicating with the police. And by the time I got there, I was in Manhattan. By the time somebody contacted me and said that he was on Church Avenue, and I got back to Brooklyn, he had left the location. So I said, you calling me to meet with me? Come and meet with me. But the police was with us. And so Melly Mel came and joined us because she had a separate police, report from a different precinct. And so the police asked us to identify him. And CGID sent private investigators to find him. And they tracked him to a location in Queens. The police did not have his date of birth to put in the system for a warrant to be issued, because anybody could name Mikhail Rodriguez, and then they might go and arrest the wrong person. So there's certain information that they need in order to effectively issue a warrant. And so we identified him today. We got government officials here to get his date of birth, and we supplied it with the police. And I know Melissa Atwell went back to the precinct to talk with the detectives. I have an appointment with the detectives from my precinct in an hour, and we will listen to what they have to say. But I want to warn everybody in the PPP. You're not going to come to the United States and threaten us. He thinks he's some big politician or some big thing that he could come on Church Avenue and challenge people. This is not the rodeo. This is the United States of America. Exactly. And the rule of law obtains here. The rule of law must be adhered to in this country. And so we will make sure that every time our rights are violated, every time we are harassed, we will continue to make those reports. to the NYPD and the Justice Department.
But Rickford, rightfully so. A lot of Guyanese, especially when I mean, we know you're big in stature and so forth, and you have your entire organization there. But a lot of persons reach out to us. Several persons reach out to me directly, wanting to know what is the situation with Melissa Melly Mel, because they are worried about her safety. Knowing full well for the past perhaps months, if not years, she has been revealing a lot of information that is otherwise unknown to the general public, albeit allegations at the point in time. And one would have expected a government who says that they want to go after persons who are involved in corrupt practice and whatnot, that this information that is being fed by her, obviously it's coming from inside sources, because Melly Mel is in the United States, and the fact that she is able to put out there detailed documentation from transaction and signed document and so forth. They are persons within the government agencies and ministries who are feeding that information. Likewise, in my budget presentation, like my colleagues, all of us stress the point of the amount of corruption that exists in government agencies in Guyana. Where is Melly Mel now? Is she safe? Is she comfortable? Is the police, like they did with you the last time, is the police providing protection or surveillance on our person?
Well, I'm not sure what security arrangements she has. I'm pretty sure she's safe. I'm pretty sure, like me, we're not afraid of anybody from the PPP. We're not law breakers here. We're not criminals. We are people that speak the truth, and the PPP cannot stand the truth, and so they're employing tactics that Russia uses to go after their dissidents, and it would not be tolerated in the United States. There's somebody feeding the government of Guyana very, very misleading information. And based on that information, they have been acting. And I want to tell them to continue to act based on that misinformation. As you know, when they have been emboldened because they were able to send Sarabo and an accomplice to my home on a Sabbath and with guns to threaten me, and they got away with it. Yeah. But I tell you, were it not the Sabbath, it would have been a different outcome. And because of that, the United States government basically calling the ambassador and warn him or whatever it is. But we have been pursuing it with law enforcement, and federal law enforcement takes a very long time to act, especially when they're actors outside of the United States. Yeah. But there are several state crimes that are violated here, and we're not going to let them get away with it. I will talk to, this morning I was in touch with people at the highest level of the NYPD, and I spoke with the FBI. Because this is a continuing pattern of harassment. Mm-hmm. And these miscreants, like critics and the other operatives of the PPP, that come into the United States emboldened by Barjadeo and his other accomplices, think that they could come to this country and get away with it. One of them will be hurt. Yeah. I wish they would. As a matter of fact, my understanding is that critics went to the home of one of Melissa's relatives. Or in front of the home or something of one of Melissa's relatives. I mean, he should have been shot. Yeah. He should have been shot. We don't know if he's coming to kill somebody. I mean, I'm not calling for violence. I'm calling for people to protect themselves. He's a very violent person. He was just arrested. I'm shocked that he was allowed to enter the United States. He currently has several cases in the courts, criminal courts in Guyana. He was just arrested for attacking a man with a gun in a club. We don't know if, like Sarabo, he came to this country and acquired an illegal weapon and went to the home of or in the vicinity of the home of one of Melissa Atwell's relatives. I wish he would try that nonsense with me, because we will protect ourselves. Correct. And it is ridiculous that we have these agents of the government of Guyana. You know what? They're building a very good case for the reputation of the country and the reputation of the PPP. No, indeed.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, because they're coming into a foreign country and threatening people and harassing them. I mean, he called my phone several times. I'm going to release the list, the screenshot of the calls so that people can see who the hell this guy thinks he is, that he could come into the United States and threaten people. Exactly. One of them going to get hurt, because in this country, people are allowed to bear arms to protect themselves, to protect their family members, and to protect their property. And somebody is going to invoke those laws.
Exactly. All right. So quickly before I let you go, Rickford, so the police has the report, and now they have essentially launched an inquiry to locate critics location. As
Well,
it stands
what
right
has
now,
happened is that the reports were made before. As
yes.
of with regard to the incidents for today, I made another report for harassment.
Mhm.
Those reports go to the detectives, and the detectives issue essentially what are warrants. And so any police officer that runs into him can arrest him.
Exactly. And perhaps even if at the point in time when he tries to leave the country, there's a likelihood depending on the police
Well,
and how far they take
let's see what happens. I leave
exactly.
that in the hands of law enforcement.
All right, excellent. Rickford, let me just again, on behalf of the Guyanese people, extend our appreciation to you and, of course, Melly Mel, Norman Brong, and all of the folks there in the diaspora who have been doing an excellent job continuing to expose the excessive of the People's Progressive Party Civic. And, of course, now we've seen, and all would see, including the folks in the United States, the extent in which they're prepared to go because they believe like the United States is Guyana, in which you could turn up in front of somebody's house, cuss them out, bear arms, and all of this without consequences.
And
We like
I hope the officers of the United States Embassy that issue that visa are watching, because
exactly
what he's done is a crime.
correct is right. All right, Rickford, I'll let you
Thanks for
go.
having me.
Thank you very much, my brother. Be safe, Melly Mel. Be safe out there.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too. All right, viewers, that was, of course, Rickford Burke, and he was updating us as it relates to developing story out of New York. The Guyanese critics, who is currently in the United States, apparently issued several threats, allegedly on Melissa Atwell, best known as Melly Mel, and Rickford Burke. The New York Police Department has since taken action, and an arrest warrant has been issued for the Guyanese critics there in New York. And of course, once any developing story comes, we will be bringing you a live update as it relates to that. All right, so continue on the program. Yesterday in the National Assembly of Guyana, the 5th of February, a budget was passed to the tune of $1.382 trillion. The question the Guyanese people continue to ask, what has changed and how would this benefit their lives? The People's Progressive Party Civic, on their part, believe that this is the best ever budget. In fact, for the last 6 budgets that were presented in the National Assembly by the PPP, they claim that these budgets are the people's budget. But what have the people said about the budget? Joining me tonight, Member of Parliament Devin Sears from Region Number 10, and Member of Parliament, former Minister Annette Ferguson. Good evening, Devin. Good evening, Annette. Welcome to Whip-Lash.
Good night, Chris. Good night,
Thank you
Chris,
so much,
and
Chris.
good night, Devin.
Most welcome.
Thank you for
And
having
of course, I know for certain you guys were listening to the discussion with myself and Rickford Burke and what is happening there in New York with Melissa Atwell and the Guyanese critic. Now we want to focus our attention on Budget 2025, the largest budget in Guyana's history. And of course, it continues a sequence of budgets that were presented in the National Assembly by the People's Progressive Party Civic, now totals 6 budgets and 14 supplementary. All of that totaling some over $4.9 trillion. The cost of living remains high. Public servants continue to receive low wages and salaries. Our pensioners can't get a break in a population that is less than 1 million people and a country which has the fastest growing economy in the world. I'll start off with remarks from Devin and then I'll go to Annette.
Yep. Thank you very much, Chris, for having me on Whip-Lash, and good night to all our viewers. I know the internet connection is a bit bad here in Linden, and this is an example of what we have to contend with up here, always being sidelined and marginalized. I want to say, Chris, I do agree with you with what you just mentioned with regards to it being the largest budget, as every year. But the sad part about it, the small man or those down to the bottom are not, feeling the benefits of such a large budget. The cost of living continues to go up. Every day, folks, Guyanese are struggling to get by, whether it is to pay their bills and so much more. And being truthful, there's not much in it for the coming Guyanese. And of course, we're going to go into it later on in the program. But Chris, the government has a lot to account for, and we, the opposition, will continue putting fire under their feet.
Okay. Excellent. Annette Ferguson, budgets are nothing new to you. You've been in Parliament. In fact, the two of us joined the Parliament from the 10th Parliament, so you know there were approximately 13 years thereabout. Tell us about Budget 2025. We note, and we'll come to that in depth as it relates to corruption in government agency. But tell us your take based on the feedback that you would have received from your constituents as it relates to Budget 2025 and the measures therein or the lack thereof.
Thank you very much, Chris, for having me on your program. I think this is my first appearance, and I want to take this opportunity in saying a good night to all your viewers and listeners. Look, Chris, like what Devin said, that Budget 2025 is no different from the other previous budgets that this PPPC government would have passed since they came back to government in 2020. I have been on the ground, and not only in my constituencies, but I can tell you, engaging with different ones, they are of the belief, like we all know, that this budget has nothing to offer them. Because you would recall, Chris, that previous budgets spoke to the issue of being prosperous, moving the Anna forward, and all kind of things. And from then to now, nothing has changed significantly for the people. You speak about the measures. You're talking about 100,000 for every child born to parents. For me, Christopher, this government's interest is not on building families, keeping families together, because the mere fact that many Guyanese, more so young people, hear, oh, I get in 100,000 if I get a child, you would find young people getting pregnant. So, the boy, they go get a girl impregnated, she get a baby, then you move on, somebody else, your child gets pregnant, and that is how the cycle of poverty will continue, because people are so eager and hungry for every dollar. So when you come with a measure like every child born in this year, you're talking about long term, you've only been specific to 2025. And we know, Christopher, that the period for any baby to born is 9 months. So, I mean, a lot of people might get pregnant this year, and perhaps they wouldn't fall into 2025 to really benefit from this 100,000. So I don't know how these people just come up with these measures. Where did they pick it out from? It's just perhaps something to excite the Guyanese people. But I want to say to Guyanese, they got to be very, very careful with some of these measures this government would have mentioned. You talk about the other measure they talk about, they moving the old age pension, some doubling the old age pension. Christopher, you would recall when we went to the National Assembly for the first time, the pension was less than $15,000. And we were able to move, as a government, we were able to move the old age pension to $20,500. Now, if you as the government, when you were campaigning, you said that you will take old age pension to 50%. So I assume, Chris, that, well, look, when you talk about 50%, I thought that, well, look, they're going to move old age pension close to $50,000 or $60,000. I didn't know that they were actually going to build on what they inherited in 2020 when they came to government. So, Christopher, it's a mere 5,000 that has been added on this year's old age pension. And we know that many of our elderly people, some of them, they live alone and they depend heavily on that old age pension. Now tell me, how granny making out with your light bill? How granny making out with your water bill? How granny making out with your medication? Because you know, Christopher, no healthcare in this country is cheap. It's
Yeah.
unreasonable because if you go to Georgetown Hospital, you can't even get a simple Panadol. If the doctor recommends that you gotta use Panadol, you now got to go to the private pharmacies to get the medication that the doctor prescribed for you at the Georgetown Public Hospital.
But
So for me,
even
correct?
yeah. But sorry, but you even though, because I'll bring in back Devin as well. Um, Without you or any of us having to say in terms of the various health centers not having medication and so forth, it was illustrated live to Irfan Ali and his ministers at the health center there in Timeri. And we've
Exactly.
often say to people that what you're seeing at Timeri is a reflection that is happening across the country at health centers. And the question again, because you have the allocation to the Ministry of Health, billions of dollars, but the average Guyanese can't get basic medication. No, nothing substantial. Basic medication they can't get. You go to Campbellville Health Center, for example, the dental unit there has been down for approximately 3 years now. That when you go there, you are referred to the Chedi Jagan Dental School there at Parade Ground. Um, we heard the Prime Minister in the Parliament when the question was asked about the $100,000 cash grant. To quote him, well, not to quote him exactly, but essentially he said, quote, that the Guyanese people are happy despite Irfan Ali, Bharat Jagdeo announcing in November that all Guyanese will receive this $100,000 cash grant in December, before Christmas, before New Year's. And we heard stories of thousands of people across the country because, Guyanese during the Christmas period, we would go to, whether it's courts, singers, and so forth, and they took a lot of item on hire purchase, knowing or with the expectation that this $100,000 cash grant will come to them very soon. I will go to, for the benefit of the viewers there, perhaps in the diaspora, we'll go to that video and we are listening a bit to the doctor explaining to Irfan Ali about the absence of basic drugs at the Tamiri Health Center. So let's go to that video.
In a timely manner, we have to ration out drugs. We have to tell patients, well, you can't get 2 months of drugs this month. You could only get one. You're going to have to check back in with us to see if we have the medication for you. A few months ago, we were out of simple things like Panadol. We had to ask our patients to be buying nasal drops for their babies when they're in cold, when they have colds, right? When I first came to Mary Health Center, we didn't even have blades to incise abscesses or gloves, right? I had spent my own money, bought the gloves, bought the blades, came to work, did my best for this community. I'm advocating for the staff at the health center. We've currently been without flushable toilets for several months. We're fetching water in buckets to flush the toilet for the staff at the health center. We have had issues where the health centers have been flooding because of the toilets. So we're having to dispose of our limited supplies. When the water gets in and soaks the gauze and all of those things, we have to dispose of those things. We're not able to use them anymore. Then we have delays in getting the medication to us, getting the supplies to us. I don't know if it's because that you're coming today, they sent some supplies yesterday to tide us over. You know how those things go. We don't have any AC in our pharmacy bond. So the pharmacist has to turn on her outside AC, open the door, and she's often cold to ensure that the drugs are stored at the right temperature. We have trees growing onto the building. We've asked for those trees to be cut down. The compound hasn't been weeded since November. We have trees growing onto the building. That's eventually going to cause a problem with the roof. So we have a lot of concerns with the health center. We don't have a permanent cleaner. We don't have a clerk. So we have 2 pathway workers. They come in more than their 10 days because they recognize the need for us to be clean and tidy, and they work more than the time they're supposed to help us out. But we have to carry a lot of that weight. All right.
All right. I wanted the operators to keep the video there all the way till the camera pans on Irfan Ali, that he was there live in person along with his ministers when the doctor there at the Tamari Health Center. Watch, you got 1, 2, 3. I'm seeing Kwame Mackay, I'm seeing Indar, I'm seeing Suzanne, I'm seeing Jennifer, former minister, and so forth, and they're all there. So why this is significant? Because we have been saying this ad nauseum in every budget presentation, in every speech, because the People's Progressive Party Civic, in their propaganda, utilizing the National Communications Network, DPI, and all of the friends and associated media houses, to always say that the opposition is lying, and we want to paint a picture to the international community and people abroad that these things are happening in Guyana. Here it is, a doctor is explaining, is this exposing to Irfan Ali. Is he happily smiling there, taking picture? You know, he taking picture, taking hug and them thing. And the fact of the matter is that this community is starved of basic health facilities. The young lady spoke about the toilet, that the health center is flooding as a result of the toilet. So is it not the case that the toilet is overflowing into the health center in Guyana when Irfan Ali is taking these wonderful pictures and smiling and hugging up people, painting a picture that Guyana, everything is bright and beautiful in Guyana. A budget of $1.382 trillion in a country with a population less than 1 million people. And this is the situation that we have. And it is in every area of governance. We talk about water supply on a daily basis in communities across this country is either low or no water supply. And then the water that comes from the pipe, you can't use it, as the lady explained there from Parfait Harmony, you can't even use it to wash your yard. You can't use water coming from the top in a country which is the fastest growing economy in the world. And Guyanese can't get potable water from their taps that they can use to wash their yards. Mm-hmm. Where is these money? Where the money going? Where is the money going? No, a budget of 1.3 trillion.
I think you know where it's going.
I'm going to this now, and I want your candid views, because later on in this year, the Guyanese people will have to make a decision. Yes, they will have to make a decision to determine whether or not all of these resources that the country is now blessed with, if these resources will go to benefit them and their families, or if those resources will continue to go to the People's Progressive Party Civic friends, family, and favorites. And that brings us now to the topic of corruption. Budget 2025, corruption in government agencies. Devin.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. Well, you know, let's start with what was banned from Parliament. From the onset, before we head into budget debates 2025, you know, we received a lovely memo, which came from the speaker, saying that we cannot even use the word corruption. That's the most preposterous thing we've ever heard.
It's deliberate. It's not by accident.
Yes,
sorry, it's not by accident.
Corruption does exist,
yeah.
And we have to first acknowledge that it does exist from the top down, Chris. And we see it every day from even the police officers in the streets. And mind you, not all of them, some of them. There's corruption, there's bribe. So you can imagine what's happening at the top. Mm-hmm. And every day when we look in the media, it becomes more glaring that this government, the PPP government, is corrupt. From the top down. Even when we look at regionally, Chris, we just approved $8.5 billion to the Regional Democratic Council, Upper Demerara Barbies. But let's look at the management structures that we have in place. Again, from the top down. If you look at the management of the Regional Democratic Council number 10, we have an REO alone, no DREO, no AREOs. What happened to those senior positions within the administrative arm of the RDC? So the decisions and the execution of various tasks and decisions made by the councillors is done by one person. And it's even touted that he's one of the signatories to even the fund at Linden Enterprise Network. In there, we have over $300 million stocked and stashed away, which is supposed to be helping young entrepreneurs now and upcoming businesses, but all because they want to control. They have not even appointed a board. And this year again in 2025, $50 million was allocated to Lynn. No board.
Yeah.
When we look at Linden Hospital Complex, no board exists. We have a REO that is functioning as the CEO of the Linden Hospital Complex. No board. There are no checks and balances. There's no transparency in the management of these important organizations. And hence I say there's corruption from the top down. What is it that Linden deserves more? And of course, we're going to be calling them out on their BS. Just a few days ago, the minister in Parliament told an untruth.
Yeah.
When asked about the Wairuni Secondary School and its current status, because mind you,
I would want to take the viewers to that. So I'll ask the operator to bring up that clip with Devin Sears and his questioning during the committee supply in the Parliament as it relates to the allocations that were made to region number 10.
On the education delivery, which speaks to the project includes provisions for schools and educational facilities. And there's a sum that's allocated for 2025 over $400 million. I would like to ask the Honorable Minister, with regards to the Wairuni Secondary School, at what percentage is completed at this point?
What percentage is it at? What percentage is it at? And it's going to be completed with
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. It's about 80% completed, and the honorable members, you could see, is very excited. The Honorable Bishop Edghill, because he knows that their school didn't exist there before, and so we're getting a school, and it's going to be completed for the new term, September, and it's about 80%.
80%. Right. So that's a school. 80%.
80%.
In the Parliament of Ghana. It's
Yeah.
80% completed, according to the minister when asked. And you can see the picture tells 1,000 words.
Exactly. The picture tells 1,000 words. And, Chris, I must give credit to our councillors or vice chairman or regional chairman who goes into the nooks and crannies, who goes to these villages and interact with the residents there. And to their surprise, just last Saturday, they were at Wairuni and took this photo.
Yeah.
It looks as if it's on some stilts and the 2 concrete blocks. This does not even look like a secondary school. In fact, last year, the Honorable Member, Minister Priya Mani-Chan, she, when they were doing the unveiling of the plan for the Wairuni Secondary School, mind you, we embrace this project. It's needed for that village and along the Berbice River. But the architectural drawing or sketch does not resemble this at all. This looks like a chicken pen. And this tells you the level of care that the PPP has for the indigenous villages. Wairuni is one of the largest villages along the Berbice River. And yes, they need a secondary school. Oh my God, Chris, you'll give them any old thing. If this is 80% complete, I don't know. Maybe my math's wrong and I'm not seeing something. Maybe there's a tarpaulin that does have to cover this structure, and then that's it. Maybe that's the 80% that she's talking about. But what I do know is that heading into this election, they will not even get 80% of the votes when it comes to this elections coming up because of the nonsense that they're doing, right?
Exactly.
Clearly, this here, Chris, again, the APNU AFC, whenever we do something, we do it proper. We do it good the first time. This is nonsense that they're doing for our people up there. And it's a shame that, the supporters of the PPP will accept such incompetence when it comes to work.
Yeah. But I agree with you. Let's bring in back Annette. So what is important to note, because we note in the wrap-up during the budget debate that you had a lot of statement, a lot of misinformation, a lot of blatant lies being spewed by several ministers, including the Minister of Finance. He went on a platform and he enjoyed himself. But what we want to remind the viewers out there, and particularly the People's Progressive Party civic government, it is that same level of arrogance that we saw on display.
Yeah.
It is that same level of disrespectful behavior as it relates to transparency and accountability that we saw from the People's Progressive Party Civic in the lead up to 2015 and the lead up to 2011. Because you see, as I mentioned in my speech, I spoke about the oligarchy. And essentially, that is what we have right now in Ghana. An oligarchy that they believe that the wealth and resources of this country belongs to their friends, family, and themselves. And anyone who challenged them, irrespective of blatant evidence of corruption, is that they believe that they have a right to be there. Yeah. I'll ask the operator to bring up that aspect of my presentation, because it was even former president of Ghana, David Granger, who warned Ghana about the People's Progressive Party Civic and the new culture. And this, and in fact, my presentation came on the heels of former US President Joe Biden farewell speech to the American people. So we go to that, we come back, and we start with Annette Ferguson, and she will take us through that paces, the People's Progressive Party Civic in the lead up to 2015, and why the people of Ghana reject them. And here now in 2025, the same PPP, the same playbook, anytime they're in office, always massive corruption, always fraud, always giving contracts to their family and friends. And that is why the people rejected them in 2015, rejected them in 2011, and of course in 2025, the people will do it again. Operator, over to you.
Speaker, the PPP's record of withdrawals. Mr. Speaker, over the past 4 years, the PPP has treated the Parliament of Guyana as an ATM. They have made 20 withdrawals, 6 budgets, and 14 supplementaries allocation, totaling over 4.9 trillion Guyana dollars. This enormous spending has left the Guyanese people asking, what has changed for us? Each year, we are told this is our year and that every budget is the people's budget. Yet, Comrade Speaker, the promises in these budgets are nothing more than a fleeting illusion, vision that will never be attained under the People's Progressive Party Civic. Sir, for some reason, over the successive years of the People's Progressive Party Civic in office, the public servants are always left behind. Comrade Speaker, if you compare the APNU AFC's 4 years in office without oil revenues to the PPP's 5 years with oil, the difference is clear. Under the APNU AFC, public servants receive a total wage increase of 77%. Under the PPP, which access trillions in oil revenues, public servants receive just 35%. Typical greed from the PPP government. Big budgets, but small increases for the people who keep this country running.
All right, so that was not the one I was looking for, but Annette Ferguson, take us through. We've been in the hustings of Guyana like Devin for a number of years. And exactly what we're seeing on display by the PPP now is exactly what we saw before. It is a culture. It is in the PPP's DNA. Some years ago, Guyana was dubbed one of the most corrupt countries in the Western Hemisphere under the People's Progressive Party Civic. And we're swiftly moving right back there. We've seen it time and time again, and this is nothing new to you.
No, it's nothing new to me. And I wouldn't even say that we're swiftly moving back there. We have really moved. Yes.
We did it.
Yes, and even and probably worse. But let me say this to you, Chris. The people of Guyana rejected the People's Progressive Party Civic on the 11th of May 2015. Why, Chris? Because corruption was the order of the day. You would recall the Gaisuku scandal, where billions of taxpayers' monies have been injected in a failed sugar corporation. We had the fiber optic cable, where billions of taxpayers' dollars were funded through Alex Ramatar, the son of Donald Rumsfeld was heading that unit, Chris. You would recall the promised Guyanese. They're going to get fast speed internet from Brazil right up to Suriname, Christopher. When we took government in May of 2015, what we found, Christopher? We found cables lining all over the trail there in Lethem. So, but it was waste of taxpayers' money. Christopher, what else Guyanese rejected the PPP in 2015? The one laptop per family, Christopher. You would recall they claim how they were purchasing these laptops from this Picura. When you do find out, is somebody close to the PPP who lives somewhere in America in some house where they suddenly buying these laptops from Christopher. Christopher, what else did Guyanese reject the People's Progressive Party? You would recall the Amila Falls project. Billions were invested of taxpayers' money, Christopher. Who they gave that contract to? They gave it to a man named Flip Motilal, who really and truly flipped, because Flip had no experience in construction of roads, no experience in electrification, but you give a man, a novice, who knows nothing, Christopher. You could remember. It was the falls to nowhere. Yeah. It was the falls to nowhere. So Guyanese rejected the People's Progressive Party Civic in 2015, not only because of the massive corruption. Christopher, you would recall also, we had the death squad, the phantom squad. We were a narco state. The nepotism, the discrimination, the victimization is all because of those things. The People's Progressive Party Civic was rejected. Progressive Party Civic. They said to Guyanese, oh, give us one more chance. Yeah. The beat up on the coalition, oh, we increased we salaries by some 50%. To be exact, in October of 2015, it was that same Baba Janvio who cannot be trusted, who said that once the People's Progressive Party Civic is to return to government, they will reverse the salary. Christopher, we not see a reversal of any salaries. What we saw is increase upon increase. If the public servants getting 7%, they're giving themselves 7%.
Correct.
If the public servants getting 8%, they're giving themselves 8%. If the public servants got 10%, they give themselves 10%. So fast track to 2025, Christopher. You think corruption done? Corruption then done, Chris. It is worse under the People's Progressive Party Civic. And I know the Guyanese are not stupid, Christopher. Guyanese have seen what is happening in the housing ministry. Guyanese have seen what has happened in the Ministry of Agriculture. Guyanese would have seen what transpired with the 100,000 cash grant, Christopher. And you spoke to the issue of even the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. We must never forget that. And I want to make this point and to remind Guyanese why they should reject the People's Progressive Party Civic in 2025. In 2022, Guyanese, the National Assembly approved $2.6 billion of your money to fund a 12-story building. In 2023, we approved $4 billion. In 2024, we approved $2 billion. So, and in 2025, $1 billion, giving it a total of some $8.6 billion. I know what is happening, Guyanese. Not a pile, not a foundation, not a nothing. The seals, what the goodly bishop is now claiming to be fabricating somewhere in some country. He called couple countries, well, Colombia, he called Turkey, he called, I think, US. I'm trying to remember 4 countries he called, where these materials are being procured. Now tell me, since 2022, you got monies, and none of these materials wasn't made and shipped to this country. So the corruption is pervasive in this government,
and the breaches of various financial regulations. because that was
Exactly.
highlighted as it relates to the cash grant. That according to the government, several ministers and so forth, that these checks were cut in December. And those checks now are awaiting funds. But based on the financial regulations law, once you reach December the 31st, those checks, those monies all have to go back to the consolidated fund. And then in this
Exactly.
new cycle, then that has come out. But the PPP breaches all of
Exactly.
that. And according
Yes.
again to the Guyanese who have not received their $100,000 cash grant, according to the Prime Minister, you are happy. You are happy. The Guyanese people are happy. You have no problem. I think today is likely probably day 510, something like that. There about whatever
Yes.
the days be. Well, but not necessarily 500, but it's a lot of days, and the people are waiting on it. No, it brings you to the question about the PPP and how they go about their mandate. It is not based on any plan, any structural arrangement. Your finale will wake up one morning, he'll do a 5:30 a.m. meeting, and then he will shout to the people, I'm going to give everybody $100,000. Well, in fact, his words, $200,000 per household, instantaneously. His words, instantaneously. And then that was reverted after the APNU, AFC, the WPA, and all of the various parties went out there and said that, listen, you are essentially setting up a system or a program for people to be disenfranchised. And it happened during the $25,000 cash grant, in which thousands of Guyanese still have the pink slip waiting to collect that, right? And then they reverse, and they want to the 18, every person 80 years and above, $100,000. And they promised the people of Ghana that those monies will be made available to them before Christmas. Annette, I see you're twitching. Go ahead.
Yes, because Christopher, I want to push this in. You know, they're talking about how the National Resource Fund that the coalition government framed, it was a bad law. But Christopher, I want to say to your viewers here, or to our viewers, that when they came in and they repealed that 2019 NRF Act, they didn't repeal it 100%, because 75% of the Coalition Act of 2019, they retained, Christopher. The only thing that they changed, Christopher, remember we had a 22-member committee where we would have had members from civil society, the regions would have gotten an opportunity to elect a representative to sit on the board. No, what they did, they took that completely out of the act and just had like a 3 or 5 man committee so that they can put their hands on the money. So there's no proper accountability. There is no proper transparency as it relates to what is happening to our natural resources fund in money. But when we ask the question, Christopher, you would recall that the government is not coming clean. Last evening too, you would recall that during the examination of the Ministry of Finance, some $400 million for land and transport. When I ask the question, what are you doing with this money? What vehicles you're buying? Where are these vehicles going? The minister gonna tell me and my intelligent colleagues, that the Ministry of Finance buying these vehicles for other agencies. When I calculate the figures from 2023 to 2024 and 2025, it's over $1 billion in vehicles. So tell me, where are these vehicles going, Chris? And I want to remind Guyanese that when the coalition government came to power in 2015, there were a lot of missing vehicles.
Yes.
Saru had to do the investigation, and when we found some of the vehicles, they were at private residences of ministers. You would recall that, Christopher, for these obvious reasons, come 2025, the People's Progressive Party civics must be rejected because the teeth ain't bad. And by the time we catch ourselves, there'll be nothing left in the NRF for us and our future generations to come.
Exactly. Devin, jump in there.
All right, thank you very much. I know Annette had a lot to say, but on the issue of
Yeah.
corruption, of course, the opposition, we've been making representation, and I just want to point him out, Ganesh. Ganesh, of course, he had mentioned and he's very vocal about Guyana's procurement system and, of course, its reform, which leads to ultimately its control primarily by PPP operatives, and it goes in the direction of favoritism. So the whole thing about when we're talking about corruption, we really need to address the flaws that's in our procurement system. We need to start with that. But what I want to touch on very quickly, Chris, it has to do with the looking for it culture. The looking for it culture. Now, the looking for it culture simply means that the PPP targets the needy. The PPP is creating a dependency or allowing our citizens to become dependent on them,
Yes.
to depend on handouts, cash grants, this grant, that grant. So that us as Guyanese must always go back to them. You know what I said, don't never bite the hand that feed you. Well, I'm telling the PPP right now, the Guyanese people will bite your hand because it shows clearly they don't care about them, their future, their family. They are constantly creating generational wealth for themselves. Now, let's look at what has been happening over the last couple of months. We see all sorts of contracts being handed out to everybody. This body getting a contract, that body getting a contract. And there's no problem with that. You know, we believe as an opposition that folks should have a fair opportunity to earn.
Correct.
But what has been happening for the last 4 years? All of those contracts used to go to the family, friends, and favorites. Now we're going into elections. And because a lot of the ghetto youths looking for it, the PPP now giving them it and hoping that they would vote for them. But let me tell the PPP something. Giving a man $100 today or $200 tomorrow or even $100,000, the cost of living in this country is so darn high, Chris and Annette, that the $100,000 is nothing. It's chicken feed. They're going to blow out right away. And just going back a little bit to what the Attorney General had mentioned, he talked about, if it is that the recipients die before receiving the cash grant, the beneficiaries will receive it. The man was seeing something that a lot of folks in this country might die before the cash grant is even awarded. I want to say this to our Guyanese people, that we have to open up our eyes and realize, you get a feeling, Chris, when you meet somebody for the first time. You just get this, it's like a soulful connection you just get. You just know when somebody gives you something genuinely without wanting something back. Well, the PPP is not like that. When you watch this government, and I'm talking about the feeling on the streets, the ghetto youths, when I just bringing him in, when Azadine goes out there and build a house for somebody, you see the reception, the joy surrounding, or everything surrounding him. But when these folks go into places like Victory Valley and Silvertown and Linden here and so on, people go out and listen to them because they want something. But that don't mean they're going to be voting for them because they know that what they're doing is not genuine. Chris, it aches my heart to see how we as Guyanese now just scraping. We're not living. We're just surviving. Check to paycheck.
That's right.
When you collect your salary, you pay all your bills, and you're wondering what really going on. You got to call your auntie Mortal or Bortin in foreign and say, "My God, send on a little blight for me." The looking for it culture is real, Chris. And that screams signs of poverty. Let me go even further to say this. All of these major beverage companies, when you look at, they're making $10 billion profits.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, no Guinness in on the shelf, no Banks beer in on the shelf. We saying, oh, the country doing well. No, there's a problem. Anywhere there's an excessive sale of alcohol, that's the first sign of poverty. Because people are looking to escape from their problems. And that's why, Chris, we as the opposition and viewers out there, we believe in a bright future for our Guyanese. And it's not just talks. It's not just talks. We have represented at every forum, and over the last 2 weeks, we've represented the Guyanese people in Parliament.
And you can judge for yourself that the PPP is not right for this country.
Yeah.
$1.3 billion ain't going in none of our pocket. Trillion dollars is not going in any one of our pockets. When you look at how the contracts are awarded in this country, Chris, and the speaker stopped me from mentioning this. Last year, when you look at how many contracts have been awarded, 90% of the overall estimated values when it comes to contracts is awarded to 10% of major contractors who are aligned with the PPP.
Yeah.
But they're going to say now that we have been giving the small man and small contractors a lot of contracts. That might be so, but look at the value of those contracts. So they're going to say 90% of the contracts went to small contractors, but the value of those contracts are very, very small compared to what their family, friends, and favorites have been receiving. It's a new day for Guyana, Chris and Annette, and our viewers. It's a new day. We have to make that change, and you have to be a part of the change. It's time, Guyanese, stop sitting on the sideline and waiting for the politicians or somebody to do something. You have to speak up, and you have to speak up now. Because this life as we know it here, you're here today, gone tomorrow. But guess what? Your children and your grandchildren and future generations still have to come. And we need to think about them. When we look, I know sometimes people bash us about, oh, you know, you don't care about the sugar industry. We care about all industries. We care about diversifying. The wealth that we're getting from petroleum and natural gases and whatnot needs to diversify. We need to pay attention to what's happening in bauxite, food security. Oh my goodness, Chris, education and every other sector that builds a country. That's what we need to focus on. Not just stuffing money in our pockets all the time and pushing out propaganda about the opposition and this body every day. We as the opposition will continue to hold the government accountable for all its actions. Every cent, every penny that is spent, we're going to hold them accountable for. And we are going to stamp out corruption once and for all. This year is election year. And you Guyanese people, we need to stand together. This is not a race thing. This is not PNC or AFC thing. This is we thing. And we need you guys on board because we're going to boot the PPP out. Chris, over to you.
Thank you very much, Devin. Annette, Devin, as we about to wrap up, I know I'm certain that our colleague Sharon Duncan program would have started. And I wanted not to detain the viewers on this podcast from not getting there, but quickly as we wrap up, Devin, you've already struck. Annette, are you there? You just struck goal, so to speak, with reference to the comparison of the APNU AFC and the PPP. Now, for a lot of persons, they can recall the PPP is good with the propaganda. I recall before 2015, before the APNU AFC got into power, the PPP was on a rampage and made reference to everything before 1992, before 1990, as if the Guyanese people will forget the People's Progressive Party civics track record. The 23 years of the PPP, the 12 years of Bharat Jagdeo, the years of the phantom death squad that operated in this country. They don't like you to talk about that. The instant you raise this story, they jump out there and, oh, they're going down the race line. But it's a reality. In this country, it had gotten so bad under the People's Progressive Party civic and Bharat Jagdeo. That same man, the same ballot man, earlier today spent how many hours detaining members of the media and just spewing. The same man, under his administration, you had the phantom death squad in operation in this country. Rickford Burke made the point, Melly Mel is making the point, and the fact that Melissa Atwell, is now resident in the United States and cannot return to Guyana under this PPP administration is testimony to what transpired in this country during the 23 years and what is transpiring now under the current administration. Is that when you bring them to the point when you're speaking about accountability and transparency in government, when you do programs like these and you expose them, they weaponize any agencies to go after you. Whether it is the Ethnic Relations Commission, whether it is the Guyana Revenue Authority, whether it's the Guyana Police Force, and the list goes on. The PPP has a history of weaponizing these agencies to come after people, especially when you expose them. But that is what happens in a dictatorship. That is what happens in a dictatorship, and we are right back there. Case in point, Melissa Atwell in the United States, Rickford Burke, Norman Brown, and the list goes on, of Guyanese who are now fearful of returning home. All they did is speak about what is transpiring in Ghana. The corruption. Guyanese were awoken, or before they went to bed, read or viewed the interview with Travis Chase and Dr. Baldio.
Yes.
Baldio, very emotional Baldio, has exposed everything and spoke about all of the lands that were given and the companies that he have and monies with Ed Adman, who's no stranger to PPP. All of these are PPP friends. No stranger to them. The PPP has always been, listen, throughout the history of the PPP, anything bad, they're right in there. I take people back to a presentation that was made in the parliament by then opposition member parliament, Deborah Bakker, God rest her soul. And she was making reference that in every political organization, they are what she called bad eggs. And in her words, she said in the House, Mr. Speaker, in the PNC, they are bad eggs. In the AFC, because the AFC was in parliament at the time, in the AFC, they are bad eggs. But the PPP, the whole basket bad. And literally, I think the PPP at every quarter, in the year that they sit and they have a conference to compare who has done more corruption than the other, who made more money off of what. I actually believe that they do this because every single day there is listen, corruption in Ghana is so rampant right now. I will not be surprised if in the next quarter we are once again placed on that list of being the most corrupt country in the Western Hemisphere. And you mentioned it earlier, Devin, about they gotta make it, gotta hustle. Is that
looking for it culture.
Looking for it mentality. In every agency, in every department, in every ministry, there's a hustle. And here are these hustles work from the lower man. If somebody come and say, listen, I'm trying to get a firearm license, for example, I got $5 million. The man at the lower end, he like good, and he get the money. Somebody above him got to get $3 million. So it's top to bottom. And as I mentioned in my budget presentation, a snake rots from the head. And when I try to bring this to the National Assembly, which is public knowledge, the fact that Bharat Jagdeo in an interview with Vice News, when the young lady asked him about his relationship with Sue, and she in that interview exposed the fact, or the allegations were made, that in order for big companies to do operation in Ghana, they have to pass funds to him, and it goes through the middleman, which is Sue. Now, all of this accusation, allegations were leveled at the feet of this man who is current vice president, former president. One will believe that they will pull out all of the stops to ensure that they arrest or detain this person, Sue, put him before the courts, and have Sue answer these questions so that the vice president can clear his name. No, they want Sue. The vice president can't clear no name because unless, and that's what I'm saying, that will continue to be that dark shadow that will be over Bharat Jagdeo's head. And he's accustomed to dark shadows because he has the one from the Phantom Death Squad and all of the allegations that were made by George Bacchus linking Ronald Gadraj as the person who's in charge of the Phantom Death Squad. That is a BBC documentary that is there, that is public. Every successive People's Progressive Party civic government is tainted with allegations of corruption from the top to the bottom. Whether it's the ministers having their spouses, their side chicks, husband, wife, and picnic, all got shell companies. We know what's going on. You understand me? But PPP over the years always believed that the Guyanese people are dumb. And Guyanese people are not following what is happening. The Guyanese people are aware. We know what is happening. Any person can tell you in any government ministry, in any agency, anything you want. Just pass the bread and the money will go. We know what is happening. But that is why we're saying this here now. Like we said many times before, you can take a horse to the water, but you cannot make it drink. And like we did in the lead up to 2011 and the lead up to the 2015 elections, is that we bring this information to the Guyanese people. You compare the PPP's track record in the last 4 going into 5 years to the APNU AFC's track record in the 5 years. They like to say that, oh, y'all didn't do this, we doing it. Y'all didn't do that, we doing it. The fact of the matter is that at the time under the APNU AFC government, there wasn't any oil resources coming in. There wasn't any oil resources coming in. Could you imagine, Guyana, if under the APNU AFC government, oil resources were coming in, and you had a minister in the person of David Patterson, blackouts would have been a thing of the past. The PPP is there now. One power ship, and the Guyanese people were told, you remember this? We were told with this power ship, blackouts would be a thing of the past. Jaguar himself said that. Then 2 morning after, we heard that the blackout is as the Prime Minister said this, as a result, the blackout is as a result of people crashing into the lamp poles. Then we heard that the birds are landing on the wires, and the entire country, I think we had an entire day of power outage for them to rectify and put some spikes to prevent the birds from landing. And once they do this, blackout will be a thing of the past. Blackouts continue. Then we heard that they're renting another power ship. And with this power ship, this is the one, not the one before, this is the one. Not the first one. The first one was like a Mitsubishi. This one is the Mercedes-Benz. And when we get this one, blackout will be a thing of the past. Up to this morning. Blackout.
Yeah.
The minister in the parliament talking about how many wells and treatment plants and potable waters all around. And the very day that budget was being presented, the people in Carpet Harmony got blackout and no one.
Wow.
That is a reality.
Yes.
And this is something that dogs this successive People's Progressive Party civic government. I don't know, it is in their DNA. More money, it's like, I can't remember the artist, more money you get, more money they want.
Yes.
And that's why this budget, essentially for them, it's like the writing is on the wall. This election are looking good. I'm saying to the Guyanese people, no, don't matter what the PPP is saying. Oh, we coming back with a majority. The PPP knows better. They know what is happening. And they are very fearful of this elections 2025. Very fearful. This budget, a lot of the ministers and senior government officials and so forth have to ensure that they get a good portion out. This whole expose that we're seeing, and we're still following it. It remains an allegation, but we continue to follow it with the house purchased in Queens with no mortgage. You know how many houses are being purchased in Dubai, in West Palm Beach, Florida, and many other states in the United States? It's that you get the money, we got it just in case things go. That is what is happening. Annette, your closing remarks.
Yes, Chris, one of the times before we close off, I want to let young people, those who are on this trail, I want to let them know that while the government continues to fuel billions into the pockets of their friends, families, and ponies, you understand me? To do projects like, for instance, the 12-story building, they give that gentleman how much? $2.6 billion mobilization. But to the small man, they give who got a road, whatever the case may be. They're not giving you any mobilization. I can tell you, them small people struggling. And I'm sure Devin can attest to this because they don't have the capacity, Chris. They don't have the resources to go there and start the work. They gotta be scurrying around the place looking for a little $5 million here or a little $2 million there until the project is completed. So I want to say to all Guyanese, the time will come when you have to make a decision. The People's Progressive is not deserving of a second chance. The People's Progressive Party is up. You would have seen rampant corruption in this country. And we don't need corruption in our society. See what corruption is doing. It is hindering us. So I believe the time will come when you will make that choice to elect a government that will look into your interests. The people didn't care about you. The people, why is it that poor people, you know, we gotta be straight. Poor people, you don't want to go cleaning drains. You don't want to be going, you know what I mean, the low graded jobs in the country. You want to, you know, come up to the level as a factor. And you cannot under a People's Progressive Party. So I'm saying to you, be wise, be firm, be focused, because the People's Party Civic must go.
Excellent. And thank you, Annette. Devin?
All right. Thank you very much, Chris, for having me here on Whip-Lash, and also Annette. Nice to see you and the viewers out there. Well, I just want to reiterate what is the common theme is that all of us now, as Guyanese, we have to band together. It doesn't matter of race, culture, creed, wherever you're from, your political persuasion back in the days, but you of yourself have to make an independent choice to support the coalition and its efforts to get back into government so that we can restore our country. I mean, they say make America great again, but Guyana is already great. We want to maintain that greatness through proper representation, and inclusivity and transparency. That is what we want for our people. And remember, the vote and the support that you're going to be giving toward this movement is not just for us as the leaders within the opposition, but for all Guyanese. And even those who are overseas, we're looking forward for your support. We know that you have many concerns, and we have to ensure that we build Guyana back and bring it back to prominence. And to our young people out there, do not be distracted. There will be a movement to say, you know, don't go out and vote and this all kind of thing and whatnot. You go out there and vote for the coalition. You represent majority of the country, almost 65%. Young voters and first-time voters, we need you out there, and we need you to join this movement of unity, of prosperity, transparency, accountability. Let's build Guyana. Let's build Guyana together. So, Chris, thank you so much for having me this evening, and I'm looking forward to being on your show again.
Most welcome, Devin. Thank you very much. And to our viewers out there, I'd like to thank you very much for joining this second edition of Whip-Lash. We're essentially, with the technicians, we're essentially still trying to get our technical aspects sorted out, and we will very soon. This program is aired every Tuesday and Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. I'll ask the operator to take us out with that aspect of my budget presentation that I wanted to share with you, in which I reminded Guyanese that former President David Granger spoke about an oligarchy, and this was back in July of 2011. And of course, my budget presentation came on the heels of former President of the United States, Joe Biden, in his farewell speech, echoing similar sentiments that was made by the former President of Guyana, David Granger, in 2011. Guyana is currently under an oligarchy in which the People's Progressive Party Civic, their friends, family, and favorite, believe that all of the resources of this country is for them and themselves to build their generational wealth, while the rest of the entire population continues to live below the poverty line. Operator, over to you. To the viewers out there, we'll see you back here on Tuesday next week at 7 p.m. for another edition of Whip-Lash. My name is Christopher Jones. Thanking you very much for joining us tonight.
Speaker, former President of the United States, Joe Biden, in his farewell speech to the American people, stated, and I quote, "Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America with extreme wealth, power, and influence that threatens our democracy, our basic rights and freedom." End of quote. Comrade Speaker, an oligarchy which threatens the democracy in Guyana has already been formed, and it is rapidly growing. Mr. Speaker, the people refuse to be condemned to servitude under the PPP oligarchy. Comrade Speaker, but I remind this House that it was former President David Granger who warned this nation in July 2011. He stated, and I quote, "The PPP has spawned a new culture that is not based on meritocracy. It is a kleptocracy supported by an oligarchy. It supports the people who places personal greed before the public need." End of quote.